Hello there everyone, and welcome to another episode of lightning fast film reviews in 5 minutes or less. Now, as I mentioned at the weekend, I was lucky enough or unlucky enough to see 2 horror films back to back. I've already uploaded one of my reviews for The Grudge, and now I'll be uploading my review for The Turning. Let's go! Beardo Banjo. So I went into this one with pretty low expectations. I'd seen some reviews, and I'm not the kind of person that completely makes up his mind based on a review. I went and saw Cats, for God's sake, and I've seen a lot of reviews about Cats telling me not to go and see Cats. But I went and saw it. The Turning is also one of those examples. I'd seen some reviews. IGN's review sticks in my mind particularly. IGN gave it a 2 out of 10 after giving The Grudge 4 out of 10. And I went and saw both those films on the same night. So I kind of knew I was in for a bad time, but I wanted to see it for myself regardless. Now straight away, just to kind of help your expectations, I actually enjoyed this more than The Grudge. So if you've watched my Grudge review and you know I hated The Grudge, you might have a better time watching The Turning. But you probably still won't have a good time. You'll still have a bad time. It'll just be moderately better than The Grudge. Now, to give you a brief overview of The Turning. Mackenzie Davis plays an English teacher who homeschools children. She heads off to a 18th century British mansion, spooky, to homeschool a young girl played by Brooklyn Prince. Now, that sounds fairly generic, and genuinely, it is. As soon as she gets there, she starts to realise something's not quite right within the house, and at first it seems like it's not a supernatural thing, it's just these kids are a little bit of a fucking nightmare. Finn Wolfhard plays the brother, and he plays it really, really well. He plays kind of a troubled, angsty young man who kind of just wants to mess with Mackenzie Davis's character and get inside her head. And he plays it really well, and she plays off of it really well. I don't have a problem with the acting in this film at all. Brooklyn Prince, as well as the young girl Flora, plays it fantastically. They all play their roles brilliantly. It's just the story doesn't really have a solid foundation to hold it up for the entirety of its runtime. As the film progresses, you start to question what's real and what's not. Are these kids actually troubled? Is Finn Wolfhard's character actually troubled? Or is there a supernatural presence in this house causing some pretty nightmarish things to happen? Mackenzie's character starts seeing things in the night, starts kind of experiencing supernatural occurrences, and starts having terrifying dreams. Now, if you've seen one horror film set in an 18th century British mansion, you've probably seen them all, and this film sadly applies to that same logic. It plods along for most of its duration, doing the same old horror tropes and the same old horror things that we've seen in a million films before it. Spooky ghosts down the corridor that the children say, "We don't go down there, we don't go into that wing of the house. Oh no, don't go down there." And then she goes down there and lo and behold, she sees some creepy shit. Dream sequences whereby she thinks something's happening and you think it's really happening, but then bang, she wakes up and none of it's real. Scenes whereby Mackenzie Davis's character is washing her face in a basin, and when she looks down, lo and behold, there's a ghost in the mirror. All that stuff is all in this film, all those generic horror tropes. And I must say, this film did not make me jump once. It did not scare me once. It is not a scary film. What this film is fairly well acted. The actors play their parts really well. Finn Wolfhard in this was pretty great. I think he's been typecast in general across most of the films he's done. He plays a kind of a generic 80s throwback film kid now, which is a little bit strange, but I guess that's come from his Stranger Things fame. In this, he plays a real kind of angsty, troubled teen, and it works really, really well. All the characters play off of each other in a fantastic way. My 2 main issues with the film are really this. Firstly, it's massively generic. For the majority of its runtime, it does nothing special, and it doesn't flesh out anything that's happening. It builds and builds, and you start to feel kind of a real intrigue for what's going on. You want to know what happened to the previous nanny. You start to see her as an apparition throughout the house, and you start to question, oh, okay, has she been murdered? What happened? Oh, why? Things start to kind of build to a real kind of intriguing place, but it's never enough for you to be truly engaged. I was engaged by the acting, but I wasn't really engaged by the story because it really was exceptionally generic. But the film, sadly, is just filled with hilarious horror tropes that just don't land well with me anymore. Things like Mackenzie Davis's character. She's been there for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and then she sees some seriously messed up shit. At that point, she says, "Fuck this, I'm leaving." She drives to a nearby coastal town, picks up a phone, rings her friend and says, "Nah, I can't do this, I'm coming home." Then while she's on the phone, she remembers she made this little girl a promise. This little girl she's known for a couple of weeks, and she goes back to the pissing haunted house that she's just ran away from. And it just makes no sense. Characters won't do that kind of thing. Characters don't do that kind of thing. People don't do that kind of thing. Give me horror characters that are believable, that will do things that make sense. Because then I feel empathetic. I feel like I can relate to that character. And that's scary, because I could see what I would do in that situation. If that was me, and I drove away, I would keep fucking driving. If you saw some dark apparition moving along at the end of a hall in an 18th century mansion you've not been to before, you would not walk towards it, you would walk away from it. You would leave, you would sprint. But the characters in this film do not do that. They run towards the thing. The second thing is a bigger issue, and I won't waste too much time on it. For some reason, this film decides to take its last 10 minutes and try and be really clever. The film tries to shoehorn in a twist that I won't go into right now because I don't want to spoil it for you. But the film tries to shoehorn in a twist in the last 10 minutes that is awful. Fucking awful. Without going too much into it, you basically get an ending. The film ends, and then it rewinds back, and all that shit didn't happen, and you get a different ending, and it's terrible. There's no precedent for it. It's not built up. It doesn't make any sense. I'm all for a film having a great twist ending if it builds to it and it feels intellectual and it feels clever and it makes sense and you can sit back and go, oh shit, that was really smart. But this isn't that. This is a twist ending for the sake of a twist ending because the film was exceptionally and painfully generic and it's trying to set itself apart from all the other films that do exactly the same thing. All in all, I didn't have a great weekend at the cinema. 2 horror films, both incredibly shit. Again with The Turning, I genuinely can't give it any more than 1 Beardo out of a possible 5 Beardos. I probably would have given it 1.5, but the ending just knocked it right back down. I did enjoy it more than The Grudge, but it's only marginal, and the ending really did wreck it for me. If you want to go and see it, please go see it, but just brace yourself to have any kind of joy pulled out from under you within the last 10 minutes. I think you'll leave with a pretty sour taste in your mouth, much like I did. And much like the guys I saw it also did. It ain't good.